I haven't gotten any prettier, but the story's going on. This here's part two. Completely engrossed in the conversation, I hadn't noticed the three or four men who were now leaning on the bar, staring fixedly at me. The barman filled a wine glass and slid the saucer of olive bar nuts next to the glass. They all wore blue suits with reflectors around the arms and legs and vertical stripes sewn in like suspenders. I glanced to the open door as more tractors began to rumble to a stop and park in the dusty heat in front of the bar. It was 97 degrees in the direct sun, the frying pan of Europe. It was just before 2, the siesta, when the Spanish world shuts down for a nice rest before the evening shift or revelry. My pack was leaning against the bar. My water bottles were empty. The moment hung in the air. The tension mixed with the heat and dust settled over the room. Some men began wiping their hands and face with pocket rags, cleaning up for lunch. I heard the swish of pressed khakis come through the door and glanced over to see the man carrying a clipboard. His, his smile faded as the heat embraced him from the chilling cold of his office. He looked up from the clipboard, saw me, and paused before he spoke. He looked to the barman, who just shrugged his shoulders and lit another cigarette and watched the smoke swirl into the ceiling fan. The old man just sat at the bar, staring blankly into his glass, the creases in his face comfortably set behind the sparse gray hair. The man with the clipboard looked at my pack and noticed the concha shell tied to the straps, a crusader's cross emblazoned in red on the shell. Peregrino, he said. I turned from the bar and stood. Si, soy peregrino. Yes, I'm a pilgrim, I said. Some of the men had already turned back to the bar and ordered el menú del dia, and of course, more wine. Donde vienes? He asked. Where are you from? I paused. The words didn't really come. How do I say where am I from? Is that what he asked? Colorado, I said with a healthy rolling of the R's. Americanadas? He said. That I got. Si, soy americano de los montanos o Rockies. Okay, Rockies, he said, and went back to reviewing the sheets on his clipboard. When I turned back to the bar, there was a fresh caña of beer and, of course, more olives. I really don't like olives as a general rule, but I ate these, hoping with each bite the companion martini would somehow materialize. The previous night I had stayed in a picturesque mosquito-filled garden albergue, freshly awash from the day's rain. The welts had gone down and left only scratchy scabs that itched under the sweat. It had been a long, flat walk. Miles of straight dirt road, dust and sun baked the trim and gnarled olive trees in the fields. The little village appeared on the horizon, the white houses, the lower part ringed in blue. A smart line dividing the two on the stucco. The windows were sunk into thick walls, the metal heat blinds closed tightly against the sun and locked against anyone else. I had left the albergue around 8 after a pleasant shower and coffee. Most pilgrims are up early in the morning to get to the next spot, the next stage, and watch each other wash their socks in the next albergue. I got up later than most, when most were gone. The showers were always empty. I had quiet and privacy for my morning ablutions before I headed out into the day. This time of year, the sun doesn't rise until 8 anyway, so I usually enjoyed the end of the morning coolness. As I walked into the village, I took off my hat in the shade of the buildings, divided only by a thin cobblestone street. The village sat on top of a ridge and cascaded down the terraced hillside. The buildings morphed from the easy white and blue of the town down to the corrugated agro-warehouses and chain-linked fenced lots. The roads were wide enough to turn a tractor and back into a tall opening behind the rolling gates. The olive trailers were neatly lined up, tarps rolled and secured next to the steel whips and earth-gouging farm equipment. Finding a small spot of shade behind the guard shack, I drained the last of my water and slid the water bottle next to the other water bottle in my pouch of my pack. Blech. It was 10 miles from the last town to here, and another 7 to the next. Hoisting my pack, I looked up the hill. There were no stores open, no bars in town that I could find. I decided to find a place to hunker down for a few hours and see what happened next. The dirt road wound around a few more buildings, and where the road turned back into black macadam, there was a sign ending the private property. On the other side of the sign was a lone building, painted white with a neat straight line of blue and a sand-blown sign barely revealing an advertisement for Cruz Campo beer. A blue trailer stood patiently in the rutted lot, dwarfing an old beaten truck, windows open, dust blowing through. I noticed the metal door was swung open and tied with a rope to the wall behind. The room was dark, and as my eyes adjusted, I could see an old bar, the brass rail dented and scratched from years of heavy work boots. I dropped my pack on the floor next to the bar. I was alone except for the barman and one old man sitting in the corner table behind me. His eyes were red and worn from the wine. Little did I know that 45 minutes later I would be standing next to a Republican terrorist hero, eating olives, praying I didn't hear banjo music, while waiting to hear about how the yellow arrows that guide the pilgrims safely to Santiago were painted. As I sat there, I thought about her red face as she collapsed against the wall and slid to the floor. "Just go," she said. The tears rolled down her cheeks, taking the fury with them as they fell to the floor. That seemed like a long time ago. So far away from this dirty barroom. Draining the last of my beer, I gently put the glass on the bar, as if putting her gently down as well. I pushed the empty glass away from me and laid my hands quietly on the bar. With the glass, I had also pushed her from my mind, wanting to be relieved from that weight. While I was sitting there having my moment, the barman came around the corner and slowly closed the metal blinds. After the door closed, the fluorescent light flickered and bathed the bar in a naked eeriness. The old man started to talk again.